Thank you. So here I am. Same old John. Looks a little different, but that's okay. I always say, I think the thing that amazes me is being old, I always had nose hairs I had to worry about or ear hairs. I don't have any of that now. So, there's some advantage to these cancer treatments. A little bizarre, but what the heck. So, we'll start here with just a very simple opening of, first of all, just bring your attention to your seat and where you're sitting. And I always like to have a person check around their surroundings. Where are you? And just locate the room that you're in and where you're sitting in it. So in a sense, just a location. And then take a moment to just bring your attention to your body. And sometimes my voice gets a little gravelly, but it's just the way it is right now. So just as you bring your attention to your body and the sitting, we're just going to take a moment to kind of go through the body, just to kind of this whole thing of embodiment as the primal or primary practice that this gift that we've given, sometimes a little ornery, but it is the gift we were given, caught in time. So just taking a moment to bring your attention to the crown of your head. And then as you feel into kind of that crown, there's also the complexity of the gray matter, the brain. And again, a lot of this practice is just, first of all, is attending to it and also just extending a bit of relaxation, our ability to note and feel. So just in the brain and the forehead, back of head to the sides. And then bringing the attention down into the eyes and eye sockets and the temples. And this noting for a moment the nostrils and the air that moves in and out through the nostrils and down through the lungs and back up again. And the sinuses. And then this, again, the fact that there's the seeing and there is the smelling, and then bringing attention to the sound. And just to include here, a lot of times practices can be so much focused on just the simple nature of sound. It's kind of the om of the universe, or the hum, or the buzz, or that is actually constantly there, which overrides some of the grosser, larger sounds. In this practice of hearing. And then just allowing that attention to move down into what we know as there's the jaw, and then there's the teeth and the tongue, the roof, and that where we have taste. So we have the four of the main elements of seeing, of smelling, of hearing, of tasting, as places that help us interpret and live in our world. And then just taking a moment now to move into the area of the neck and the throat. And again, the world of, we can say, sensation. That kaya, the body, the fifth element there, of our doors of perception. And then simply moving down through the throat and the neck into the shoulders. And allowing the body to relax. And then we're going to go down through both arms from the shoulders. Down through the biceps and triceps, down to the elbows. And from the elbows into the forearms, to the wrists and the palms, the back of hands, thumbs, the fingers, right out to the fingertips. And I think it's always helpful to know that, we build up a lot of energy sometimes, or some anxiety or fear, and that there are this ability to allow from the core of the body to bring attention to the fingers and to let energy out through the fingers. And then bringing attention into we could call it the core, just starting with the back to the shoulders, the shoulder blades, the pectoral muscles, the breasts, ultimately the physical heart and the heart center. And just taking a few deep breaths into that core of the lungs and the heart, and this place where we ultimately, interesting enough, is where a lot of teachers, when they point to the mind, they point to the heart. So that heart mind. And then moving down into the lower lungs and what we note as the diaphragm. And moving into the area of the belly, and the place where a lot of times we sometimes react in that center part of the belly. There's fear, but there's also power. So they kind of dance together there in that center of the belly, Dantian, the hara. And then just feeling and sense the connection with the vertebrae, the muscles that are holding you up. And just letting that attention now move on down into the area of there's the lower belly, the genitals, the buttocks on the chair or couch or whatever you're sitting on. And just noting the contact there. And then allowing the energetics to move on down through the both legs simultaneously. Just starting with the from the buttocks and the that that connects to the pelvic and the kind of that part of the core of our system down through both legs, upper legs, down to the knees, and from the knees into the calves and on down to the feet, ankles, and on out at the toes. And I always think it's good if you can keep kind of an awareness of the crown of the head, the heart, the fingertips, and the toes. These are all places where the energetics can move, especially in tension or fear or anxiety, can move away from. And then just sitting, this simple practice, whether you attend to the breath or a mantra or whatever brings you into harmony. If you find yourself wandering off, drop it. Just bring your attention back to the body and the breath. So it's my pleasure to join you on this solstice, this calling in the light. And it's a time where I was reading, on like tonight on Mount Fuji, there's big fire to kind of exemplify the light. And in many Native American traditions, they're also there. Norwegian. It's all this little turning that's going on, which is a moment in time where the Earth is the farthest on its axis. So we're actually the farthest away from the sun. And in that, we have a moment there where there's a transition where we've kind of built 2 minutes maybe at a time as we've come up to this apex, the solstice. And it's a time of, it can be seen as just another moment, or it can also be seen as something that is true about nature. And this is really our planetary system that's giving us a little nudge, whether it's, I think in the Norwegians is San Lucia, and there's all these different, whether it's Hopi or Korean or Japanese. I like the Japanese where they have these herbs, they put it in hot water and I don't know exactly what the herb is, but I saw these pictures of these little, they look like, I don't know what they were. They were like little prairie dogs, they were in the water, and I'm sure it was very cold, but they were happy. And we also have this kind of moment for all of us to put some accentuations on and realize that, you could say that every day, every moment is like that, but there are these moments where we take note. And this is not so much personal as a collective. And so as we've all come together, we have this one piece in common, that we've come together due to this particular timing of the earth and the sun. And it's tilted on an axis, sun, same old sun, same place. But you could say we're a little askew, but actually we're just a little farther away from, So anyway, it's really good to see everyone, I'm sorry, my computer can only take in so many people, but I've been away for, it seems like a little bit forever. It's two things. It's the pandemic, which has kind of grounded us, and now with this cancer stuff I have, and this thrilling journey of chemotherapy, which I have very good news. I don't know if you know what a PET scan is. It's where, they kind of shoot you up with radioactive isotopes and sugar, And before I was stage 4, which happens a lot with this kind of lymphoma, but because you don't know what's going on. It's very, also, this is very aggressive. It moves very fast. And I had a PET scan this last week on Thursday, and Friday the doctor called me and said I was clear. So it simply means I have to do about 2 months and something more of chemo, and I'm through. That I don't have to do something else. So for me, that's a big present, really, hurrah, hurrah. So I'll be back bugging you more. It's just the way it's going to end up, And, but I'm happy about that. It's like, I don't cherish these treatments. And I must say, they are, they're a drag. I sort of know it's 3 weeks, and I'm going into. I just came out of what's known as the nadir, so I have like a week where it's pretty crazy. I don't sleep at all, and then I sleep a little bit for the next week, and then I go back to normal, and then I get another treatment. So, but all looks well. So I feel I got something to look forward to, and I can actually start maybe planning something besides today. And there's something really marvelous about not having that, though. I'm sorry, my mind immediately, as soon as he said, well, you're clear, I immediately started planning. I so notice how that incestuous, that impetuous mind that really has no shame, it just wants to rattle off, So I wanted to start by reading a little piece here that I'll kind of go into a little bit. And it's from Maitripa, who was one of the great Karju Mahamudra teachers. And seeing objects, all things are one's own mind. Seeing objects as external is just the noetic projection. The whole, quote, of appearance is as empty as a dream. The mind as such is merely the flow of awareness, without self-nature, moving where it likes with the wind. Empty of an identity, it is like space and all phenomena, all the same. So I think I'll just start there. The flow of awareness, is without self-nature, moving where it will with the wind. And this is the idea that the mind, where it really has no shame. It's simply a grasp at whatever memory or idea or cognizant thing that arises. And then it tries to follow it. And by trying to follow it, it tries to also manipulate it or figure it out. And our practice here is simply to see its nature. It's not to do anything with it. And yet our habit is that we want to do something with it. We'd like to know. I mean, I spent, when at first this whole thing began, after they took these biopsy samples, it took them 3 weeks to actually diagnose what it was they had. I said, 3 weeks, that's a long time, But this particular thing, I thought there were 60 kinds of lymphoma, but there's actually 80. So I should just be very grateful that they figured out I was in the 30%, which is the most common. And that because it's extremely aggressive, that it's curable. So I am happy to say I'm on the path of kind of letting go of it. But it took 3 weeks, and I actually was okay with it. It was like, oh, okay. When am I going to find out? And it's one of the great privileges of having practiced this for so many years. I'm not too sticky about that stuff. And yet, of course, there's a little bit of apprehension in the back of the mind because we are human. And one of the things is that we want to know. It is our kind of essential nature is to know. And at the same time, if you're given the possibility of saying you can't know, which is actually the truth about all of this, then there is this possibility of finding a piece of freedom within the not knowing. And I think this is huge because when we actually begin to acknowledge that we don't know, that there is a gift. And the first gift is first relaxation. There's like, oh, okay, I don't know. I'm not going to pretend. I'm not going to make up. I'm not going to fantasize. I'm not going to get neurotic about it, but I'm just going to say, I don't know. That's okay. So I think in some ways, even though that may be uncomfortable sometimes, it's actually a great privilege to, as far as practice goes, to actually learn that not knowing has a lot to it. I think, this thing of appearances, which are simply, they're simply projections. And in a way, all of us here, this whole process is very much, it is a dream. And yet we take it as real. And because we take it as real, we suffer. Now, that is very simple, and yet it's true. And that we can spend time, I think ruminating and chewing and saying, "Oh, I'm gonna get this. I'll figure this out." And I found a lot of times when I didn't figure it out, and I needed to know something, the answer came, but it didn't come from that. It came from nowhere. It came from maybe, yes, I had to explore it. And I think that's true. We explore things. But as long as we can do it without needing to rely on an answer or a means or a way, then there's space for that to, in a sense, if I use the words, germinate, to actually give us sometimes a non-linear answer to something that was maybe gnawing on us. It's interesting as seekers. It's such a paradox to me. I spent so many years seeking, climbing mountains and seeking. And at some point in all this, I realized that the seeking was actually more of a hindrance than an actual gift. That in a sense it had done its work. It had got me to the path. In the path, I understood to a certain level, and that somehow then I had to begin to release the seeker, the one who had to know, and realize that, there is knowing, but it's not about the I wanting to know. It was just simply about knowing. And that knowing actually came not from something, but from nothing. And yet it took that seeking. So in the same way that I think that in our physical practice, for many of you, I know I spent many, many years trying to work on, this very fickle mind, to find a way to collect it, to give it some concentration, and then some ability to use that concentration. And so I think it was very helpful. I think when we first come to this path, that the simple truth that, yes, I need to collect myself. And that in collecting myself, then I have a chance of actually, instead of finding something, it's not finding something. And there is a miracle in not finding it. And that's suddenly that the seeker no longer has its identity that's necessary, but actually has just experience that's a possibility. It's always been interesting to me, this practice. One of the kind of the simple foundations of it have always been about first simply that there's a way to conduct oneself in the world. We talk about it as ethical conduct. And it simply is the fact that, there's a way of being simple. And simplicity has to do with ethics. And so when we stick with those ethics, which are very simple, Basically, it's do not harm, but it's also, the fact that we are constantly trying what to accentuate our experience on some level. And so the practice of non-harming, of sticking to the truth, of being clear with our intentions around our energetics and sexuality, and being really careful with, in the sense of not taking what's not ours, and being in the middle way, being careful, I think, with intoxicants, so that there is this possibility of having a mind that doesn't stick to things, and that's really the art, the mind that doesn't stick to things. And then when the mind doesn't stick to things and it understands ethics, then it also has to understand that we are caught in this world of identity. And we spend a lot of time, we have a whole world of psychology, which is based on kind of the balancing out of the self. And this practice is really saying, it doesn't deny that, because it needs that as its background, especially if there's some ethics or something or old suffering that life has brought us. But there is this attachment to who we think we are. And I think in some ways, first of all, yes, there's always that Dogen, the great Zen master, my mind is, I think, a little chemo brain here. To know the self is to let go of the self. And that's really the basic practice there. But it really starts out with to study the self is to know the self. To know the self is to let go of the self. To let go of the self is to be one with everything. So that's a pretty good practice, ultimately. And that somehow, I love the concept of, I know that we try to use this one, the one, and the one who knows, but ultimately, it's not that. It's like there's a place that's not one, that is not, and you could call it the 0 point, or some thing that doesn't have a charge on it. It's just not something that has a charge. And our practice is we work and work, dealing with charges, to come to a place where there's no charge. And in the Buddha's language, he was always pointing at this kind of 0 point. It wasn't one, it was a 0 point. And that 0 point was where we had to sit in the center between things and not be pulled towards the positive or the negative or the liking or disliking, all the dualism, and sit in that 0 point. And the point of a practice is to actually sit there and not try to create or make up more about it, but actually just to sit in it. And that the ultimate practice here is if you sit in the center of that 0 point, then what the Buddha was trying to teach is self-apparent. Not something you have to think about. It's something that you recognize that wherever he was, he knew, and he had some sense of what was true. And he taught just what was true. Very simple. And I know there's a lot of, intellectualization in Buddhism. But I go back always to the Venerable Ajahn Chah's kind of quote, the only book you ever need to read is your heart. And I think that's that point, the 0 point, where suddenly it's no longer about, as I was saying earlier, the Tibetans, my teacher, Turin Yesi, used to he would point to his heart and say, my mind. And at the time, I didn't understand what he was doing. And then as practice went along, I realized, oh, that is my mind. My mind sits in my heart. And that ultimately is what we're trying to do. And therefore, if we can do that, then that 0 point is no longer sort of pulling or pushing us, but just allows us to sit in the center. And we use that word equanimity. And to me, it's one of the most powerful words in Buddhism. Equanimity. It says all things are in balance. And if they're all in balance, then there's no reactivity for or against things. There is just this simply of sitting in the center and not moving away from or towards. And one finds this incredible sense of enoughness and peace. If that isn't enough, then I don't know. I think when I started, back in the 60s, and it was really all about bells and whistles. Could I find, some very direct path that would get me out of my old habits and suffering and all the rest of it? And I remember I'd lived in Nepal for about 1.5 years, 2 years, and I went to India to this ashram. And the teacher there, Satyananda Saraswati, had this thing where he used breath work. And the idea was that if you could do this, you could be enlightened in 7 days. So I thought, yes, that's for me. Of course, it didn't happen that way, but I got a great experience out of it. And sent me scurrying off to actually Bodh Gaya, where I met Joseph Goldstein and Munindraji, and started seeing, okay, maybe it's not the arrival that's important, it's the journey, and that the journey actually has a lot of richness in untangling my, I can say my neurosis, because I was carrying a lot of suffering and wounding and projections that I needed to, I had to untangle. And there's a wonderful thing about retreats, is I think I sat for years, but, one of the things was that every retreat, it seemed like I untangled another piece of a thread that had somehow bound me to my past, to my family, to my school, to all the projections I had about who I was supposed to be. And, it was necessary. But ultimately, at least from the psychological point of view, that untangling, which happened on the cushion, really, it actually increased my ability to let go. And then I went, it's all down to this one thing. I have to keep repeating these things because I have to let go. If I don't, then I will just either recreate or I will keep identifying with that, that John of now, 60, 70 years ago. But again, I think this is our journey as we begin to untangle these pieces. And I can't say, okay, maybe you don't have to go and sit for months and months and all this stuff. You may just not have that in your life, but you have moments, in the kind of the busyness of your life in the grocery store where you notice that old story or that old pain or that old memory that comes up. And this is where awareness comes in. Oh, if I'm aware, then I can notice it and I can see where is that contraction. And that contraction is something that's in your body. It's not something in your mind. It's not your memory. Memory triggers these things, but the actual reactions are in the body. And so in these teachings, if we really can get to the fact that how is it that I can just kind of touch it and relax, touch it and relax. If it takes 10,000 times, it's okay. It's just touch it and relax. And eventually that was the story, the story doesn't go away. You don't change the story. It's a very similar story. But the charge on it is gone away. And you keep doing that level by level by level as you untangle these things. And on each level, there's a sense of, a sense of possibility or peace that's there. Anyway, I'm kind of babbling on here because, that's what I do.
Siri knows many things.
And Siri, you know many things. Thank you. I think you may be more intelligent than me, but that's okay. I don't need the answer. Where did that come from? It just kind of popped up. So I was going to read to you, let me get it here. This is the Solstice, one of my Solstice poems from my little book, Scuffed Up Shoes. I don't know exactly how to. It's getting dark. I don't know where the lights are here, but I can see enough. I think, wait a second, I'm going to just do this. I think I know which one it is. That's good enough. Okay. Ready or not, sitting on the bench, meditation hall held in fog, the path winding down past the dining hall, stretching out towards the world. Sitting in remedial fear of the world, kicked out of solitude by the madness of my own life. How could sensitivity be translated? How did these sweaty palms find a home? Breathing, touching my own hand, knowing somewhere deep down, touching is always available. Not out there, in here, stepping out into a world so consumed by itself, standing, feeling body, small shiver, as the becoming and the fear arise together, as the becoming and the fear rise together. Can you ever be ready, stepping back into your life you have so carefully crafted out of all the old wounds and successes? Is it possible to stand in the center, unmoved by the tides of change, awake, collected, heart listening to all the subtle clues, Why not today, awake, at ease, remembering the monastery bell, how it rang, yet it left no trace. Ready? Yes, ready. So I thought, I don't know if this is the right thing to do or not. I mean, I can talk on and talk on, but I would like, it's a marvelous time, and I hope that you can do your own ritual of light at some point, just with a candle. And I hope Siri doesn't think I don't know what it thinks, that may be helpful to others. So if you have a question, and maybe I can answer it, maybe I can't. And if I can't, I can't. So, and I think, Marcia, can you, I have to see who raises hands. It's not easy for me because she sees more people than I do.
I see Rachel has her hand up, John.
Yes, Rachel.
Hi, John. Thanks for the great meditation Dharma talk. I was wondering if you could talk about in meditation, you had us concentrating on our crown and our heart and then our fingertips and our toes. And then you said that would help move energy, but I didn't really understand how. I was wondering if you could talk more about that.
Well, sometimes in the body scan, sometimes it can be helpful just to put the attention on the crown of your head, your heart, your fingertips, and your toes. And it's really, if you think of the core of your body, and if there's an energetic that can be moved out, it actually will move. You don't have to do anything. It will move itself, But again, the body has to be somewhat in a relaxed kind of state, and attend to, sometimes, and sometimes it moves. You'll go from the crown of the head to the fingers, to the heart, to the toes. But the idea is that a lot of the core kind of contracts itself, and that, and then and I'm sorry to use the language, but it kind of feeds on itself, and so it needs to move. And sometimes by putting attention on the crown, or on the fingers, or heart, or the toes, it then has a possibility of moving away from that contracted center, or that anxiety, or that fear, or whatever's there. I hope that's helpful. And you can use any of those points, actually. But I like the toes, especially when I can't sleep. Just take it away from my head. put my attention there. It can be helpful. So thank you. Great. Philip, did I see your hand up?
John,
Yeah.
Thank you very much for tonight. It's great to see you again. I just want to let you know that your knowing versus not knowing was a bullseye for me in my life right now. And the paradox between the brain mind and the heart mind is exactly what I needed to hear. So thank you so much.
You're welcome. I can't see but few, but I know you have questions, but maybe not. Wouldn't that be great? I answered all. There's a great sutra called the All, and it's really where the Buddha breaks it down to such a simple thing. This is it. This is the All.
Rose has a question, John, and then Alice.
Okay, go for it.
Rose?
Thank you, John. And on that note of the all, equanimity, going back to the very last wrapping up of what you were saying.
Yes.
Can you speak a little more? You were saying.
Okay, I'm saying.
The cancer treatment might be contagious. I'm getting all confused. All
No.
things are in balance, sitting in, not leaning, not pulling back. Thank you.
Yeah, no, equanimity is in some ways, I think of it as the heart of this practice. That ultimately, they always say that in the lists, which there are tons of lists, Buddhist lists, there's there's a book of just Buddhist lists, but one of the things, if you want to find again and again, just prior to awakening, is the state of equanimity. In essence, so all things have finally reached a point of balance. And at that point, then there's a deeper letting go that is possible. And so, in a sense, this is I'm not going to call it a goal, but it is the result of proper practice, that suddenly we get to a place where there's no problem, And then there is this possibility of a absolutely deep letting go that the Buddha promised. This wasn't just for some people. There's all people, and there are different levels of that letting go, but we all have that as a possibility. So I stand on the shoulders of this equanimity as that moment before there is actual release, and we never know how that's going to come or when it's going to come, but the equanimity we can come back to again and again. The moment of release, that's different, That's almost like, in a sense, I think of it sometimes as just karma, that whatever the forces come together and bingo, you have a satori or a moment of awakening or a flash or some epiphany that then enriches your life. So thank you for the question.
So Alice, go ahead.
Please. You got to unmute yourself.
Thank you, John. It's wonderful to see you, and thank you for being here. You look terrific. This is a very practical question, and you touched on it a bit when you talked about your toes in the dark. In those long, dark nights, what are some techniques you find to get out of your head and someplace else?
Well, sometimes I just, there's two things. One of them is just noticing myself. I'm just like I'm a storyteller. You're all storytellers, and that I just let go of it again and again. And I go, don't jump on that train. Don't jump on this train. And that's the mind part of it. The other part is just, especially in these long nights. And I've had some really long nights because I take this during the chemo. The first week, I get a couple hours sleep each night. That's all I get out of it. It's the way it is. My doctor said, was there anything we can do? Nope. You just have to ride that wave. Well, in a way, we're kind of doing that now with the darkest time. And it's a wonderful time. But at the same time, what do? You're laying there and your energetics are somewhat up and your mind's trying to attach to whatever comes. The idea is don't attach to it. And the other is go to your body. And one of the things I learned years ago, this in India, was, to put my attention on my feet, and sometimes I used to do the body scan of just going through my body like that. But sometimes that woke me up more. So I had to find some place that I could just, I always said it was just, I have to get as far away from my head as possible. And I'll just rest there and try it out. I stay for a little while, and sometimes I'll doze off, and sometimes it'll wake me up more. I don't know. So anyway, that's as much, Alice, as I can kind of give you on that. But, good luck.
Thank you, John.
You're welcome. So I see, is it, whoops. Okay.
So it's
It's
not
Gigi. I'm on my husband's.
Gigi. Yes, go
Right.
ahead,
It's
Gigi.
not Robert, it's Gigi.
Okay, Gigi, go ahead.
I have a lot of trouble with the past coming up just at random times, driving the car, especially trying to go to sleep at night. So I like the technique of trying to put it back on the body. But when I'm driving or something and it, I getting distracted with the past, it's trying to come, as soon as I stop moving my body, then the past tries to come and invade my brain. So I do a lot of actually trying to focus on what I'm looking at rather than that's the technique I've developed for that. But I don't know. The past is a problem, the way it keeps in.
Well, the past is the past, and it does inhabit the present many times. And I think, the awareness actually works. Also, I think sometimes when the past comes up a lot like that, there's something that's unsolved or unresolved or that's going on. And so I feel like sometimes it's just good to go to the heart. And even if you're driving, you can still be aware of it and have, it's like 10% of your attention on your heart. And it kind of softens that, that old clutching contraction, that, anger, that fear, that sadness, all of that is part of who we are. And yet at the same time, when you're driving, it's not isn't it that, I know, having done a bit of driving in my time, I haven't done any for a couple of months now at all. And part of that is that the mind wanders because it's a kind of a habit of how we drive. And therefore, it kind of unleashes some of that. So I don't think it's a bad thing. I just think that you have more to do with it than you know. And that's where, maybe it's just awareness. And so you're just more aware of the street sign or the trees or the cars or whatever. I used to do this thing when I had to drive. I drove down the Bay Area to Spirit Rock for so many years. And now I don't think I would just end up in a traffic jam. But during those years, doing the driving, I a lot of times my mind would, off, and I would instead of putting my attention on my body, I'd put my hands on my steering wheel, and just my awareness of the hands on the steering wheel, and that worked, So it's just because I couldn't put my attention on so much of my breath or anything else, but I could on my hands on the steering wheel, and that was really helpful. For many years, I did that, and it kept me out of. I've tried main thing to keep me out of trouble, and especially with my past, and we're great creatures, great imaginations. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see how we're doing time-wise here. We're at time, so I'm sorry, I'm going to keep you for a couple minutes. If you have to go, you go. But otherwise, I'm just going to do a short metta here to kind of conclude tonight's journey. So just take a moment and just, as I was saying that, Gigi, about the heart, is just bring attention to your heart. And first, I want you to know that you are the most precious being in the universe. There's no one that's ever been made like you, and possibly ever again. And this unique crazy, wonderful life that you were given. And that you can simply bring your attention to this marvelous world of just kindness, kindness for yourself. But then you can simply, by being kind to yourself, it's not indulging yourself, it's really just simply being kind. It's then extending it out. And first, just to all the people, all of you here, that you may have this bringing of the light, maybe light a candle tonight to remind yourself that of the light. And I'm just extending that kindness out first to the community and the collective here. Hopefully there was something that was helpful. And then just moving out into the world and its darkness and its confusion. And just this simple wish for this season and for the kind of Christmas and New Year's coming up. It's kind of a busy time for people and families, that you may bring that kindness to others, and that you may live within that kindness for yourself and others. May all beings everywhere be happy.